which means that alcohol can do that, the so-called heroin can do that.
I drank the vodka bottles on the plane. I was drunk. I'm drunk now.
These are the most legendary black actors and entertainers who lit up the stage and screen. But behind the fame, they were secretly battling a dangerous habit, being drunk almost all the time. Some lost careers, some lost their health, and some lost their lives. From heartbreaking downfalls to shocking public incidents. Here are the 20 black actors who were drunk all the time. 1. Billie Holiday.
Hey there, baby, make up your mind, 'cause I've been waiting such a long, long time.
Billie Holiday, often called Lady Day, was one of the most famous jazz singers in history, but behind her beautiful voice was a really painful battle with alcohol. Her alcohol addiction wasn't just a phase, it stayed with her almost her entire adult life. She started drinking young in her teenage years, partly because she grew up in a very hard environment with poverty, abuse, and little support. For her, alcohol became a way to numb the pain and escape reality. As she got older and started performing in clubs, drinking became part of her routine. Jazz clubs were full of alcohol, and many musicians drank to relax before going on stage. Billie admitted that she often performed drunk. It made her feel confident and less anxious, but it also hurt her voice over time. The problem was, once she got used to drinking a lot, her body needed it. She couldn't just have one glass of gin or whiskey. She would drink until she was totally drunk. This became worse when she also started using drugs like heroin. The mix of alcohol and drugs destroyed her health. Her alcoholism also got her into legal trouble. She was arrested more than once, and some of those times were because of her drinking. Friends and fellow musicians tried to help her quit, but she often pushed them away or went back to drinking after trying to stop. She even performed drunk during important concerts, which sometimes upset her fans, but also made them worry about her. Billie's body began breaking down from years of drinking. She had liver problems, heart issues, and her voice wasn't as strong as before. But she couldn't fully quit alcohol, even when doctors warned her that it would kill her. Her final years were very sad. In 1959, Billie was in the hospital for liver and heart failure, and police officers actually arrested her on her hospital bed for drug charges. Even then, she was drinking secretly. Just a few weeks later, she died at only 44 years old. 2. Richard Pryor.
I stopped drinking. I used to drink a lot. Been 7 months.
Richard Pryor, the legendary comedian and actor, made millions of people laugh, but behind his jokes was a very dark personal life filled with addiction, and alcohol was one of his biggest battles. Pryor started drinking when he was still young, growing up in a rough neighborhood. For him, alcohol was both an escape and a bad habit that followed him everywhere. When he became famous in the 1970s, his life got even wilder. Hollywood parties, comedy clubs, and tours were full of alcohol. Richard would often drink before going on stage, saying it helped him loosen up and be funnier. But the truth was, he was using alcohol to cover up deep emotional pain from his childhood, which included abuse and trauma. His drinking wasn't casual, it was heavy and constant. He would drink large amounts of whiskey or vodka, sometimes mixing alcohol with drugs like cocaine. This dangerous combination led to violent mood swings, reckless behavior, and health problems. Friends said he could be the funniest person in the room 1 minute and then angry and unpredictable the next. Richard's alcoholism affected his relationships. He had several marriages, and many of them ended badly because of his drinking and drug use. His partners and friends tried to help him get sober, but he often fell back into old habits. There were times he tried rehab, but he admitted that staying sober was hard because he loved the feeling of being drunk. It made him forget about his problems. But it also made him make bad decisions, like spending huge amounts of money, getting into fights, or missing work. One of his most famous and scary moments came when he almost died in 1980. While high on drugs and drunk, he set himself on fire during a dangerous accident at home. This was a wake-up call, and he tried to quit drinking for a while after that, but he would relapse again. In the later years of his life, Richard's health got worse. He developed multiple sclerosis, and doctors warned him that his past years of heavy drinking had caused permanent damage to his liver and nervous system. 3. Whitney Houston.
We have breaking news tonight out of Los Angeles, the death of singing star Whitney Houston at the age of 48.
Whitney Houston was one of the greatest singers in history, but even with all the fame, money, and awards, she had a painful battle with alcohol. Her voice was called the voice by many, but alcohol abuse kept coming back into her life again and again, almost like it was chasing her. Whitney didn't start out drinking heavily in her early career. In the beginning, she was known for being clean-cut and professional. But as the pressure of fame grew, alcohol slowly became part of her routine. The stress of touring, constant interviews, and being judged by the media made her look for an escape. Alcohol gave her a temporary feeling of comfort, but it also made her problems worse in the long run. As time went on, alcohol started mixing with her other struggles, including drug use. She was often seen drinking at parties, backstage, and even before important events. People close to her noticed that once she started drinking, she didn't stop at 1 or 2 glasses. She would keep going until she was fully drunk. Alcohol also made it harder for her to take care of her voice. Singing at her level needed a lot of care. No smoking, no overuse, and no constant drinking. But the more she drank, the more her voice began to change. Her live performances sometimes suffered because she wasn't in the best shape to sing. There were moments where Whitney tried to get help. She went to rehab multiple times over the years. In some interviews, she admitted that alcohol was one of her demons, along with drugs. But the pressure of being in the public eye and dealing with personal problems, like her troubled marriage to Bobby Brown, made it very hard to stay sober. Even when she wasn't in public, alcohol was a big part of her private life. Friends recalled that she would drink heavily at home, sometimes for days. It wasn't always about partying. Often, it was about trying to numb emotional pain. By the late 2000s, Whitney's health was clearly affected. Her voice wasn't the same, her energy had dropped, and she looked tired most of the time. But she still kept performing because she loved music. Sadly, alcohol was present in her final days. In 2012, Whitney Houston passed away in a hotel room in Beverly Hills. The official report showed she had alcohol in her system along with other substances. Even though she achieved so much in life, alcohol was one of the things that kept pulling her down. 4. Samuel L. Jackson.
That's what we did. We would drink, we would rehearse, we would smoke reefer and rehearse. We drank at half hour and we sat around and we got ready to do the...
Today, Samuel L. Jackson is one of the most respected actors in Hollywood, but before his big break, he had a serious problem with alcohol and drugs. In fact, he said in interviews that if he didn't get help when he did, he probably wouldn't be alive today. Samuel started drinking when he was young, and it slowly became a normal part of his life. In college and during his early acting days, alcohol was everywhere. For him, drinking was a way to feel more relaxed, confident, and social. But as time went on, it stopped being just something he did for fun. It became something he depended on. By the time he was trying to build his acting career in New York, alcohol was a daily habit. He would drink before rehearsals, after rehearsals, and often during late-night hangouts with friends. The more he drank, the harder it became to stop. The problem got worse when alcohol mixed with his drug use. Samuel has admitted that he would often start drinking in the morning and keep going all day. At first, he thought it wasn't affecting his work, but eventually it began to show. He missed opportunities, forgot lines, and even scared people with his unpredictable moods when drunk. His family could see that alcohol was taking over his life. His wife, LaTanya, and their young daughter were worried about him. The turning point came when his family found him passed out in the kitchen after a night of heavy drinking and drug use. That was when they decided he needed help immediately. Samuel entered rehab, and it became the start of his recovery. In rehab, he faced the truth. Alcohol wasn't just a small habit, it was a serious addiction. He learned about the reasons behind his drinking, including stress, insecurity, and trying to fit in. After rehab, he decided to stay sober for good. He's been open about the fact that his Hollywood career really took off only after he quit drinking and using drugs. Staying sober gave him a clear mind, better health, and the discipline he needed to take his acting to the next level. 5. Ray Charles. Ray.
Excuse me, I don't think there's anything wrong with the action on this piano.
Charles was a music legend who could make the piano sing like no one else, but behind all that talent, he had a lifelong battle with addiction. Most people know about his heroin addiction, but alcohol was another big problem in his life. Even when he tried to get clean from heroin, alcohol was always there, waiting for him. Ray started drinking when he was young, partly because alcohol was easy to find in the music world. As a blind musician touring in the early days, alcohol became a way to relax after long shows and exhausting travel. But it wasn't just about fun. For Ray, drinking also helped him deal with loneliness, stress, and the pressures of performing almost every night. When his heroin addiction became too risky and he started thinking about quitting drugs, alcohol sometimes replaced it. This is something that happens to a lot of people who are addicted. They stop one substance but turn to another. For Ray, quitting heroin was a huge achievement, but it didn't mean his struggles were over. Alcohol gave him that familiar buzz, but it also started causing problems. His heavy drinking made it hard for him to stay focused and healthy. Alcohol can be especially dangerous when mixed with other substances, and Ray wasn't always completely drug-free in his early recovery. Friends and band members noticed he would sometimes show up to rehearsals or performances clearly buzzed. While his natural talent could cover it up to a point, there were times it was obvious he wasn't at his best. Ray also faced personal consequences from drinking. It strained some of his relationships and made managing his career harder. The music industry can be unforgiving, and while people adored Ray, heavy drinking could still damage his reputation. He eventually managed to keep his drinking under control more than his heroin use, but alcohol never fully disappeared from his life. It was a constant temptation. Even after he beat heroin for good, there were times alcohol made staying healthy more difficult. 6. Diana Ross.
At that point, I realized my career was very, very important to me. And so that's why I decided to get back out there and do what I was happy doing.
Diana Ross is one of the most glamorous and iconic singers of all time, but her life off stage hasn't always been as perfect as it looked. She had a long battle with alcohol that made headlines, especially in the later years of her career. Diana's relationship with alcohol seemed to grow over time. In her early career with the Supremes, she was known for being professional and focused. But as the years went on and she became a solo star, the stress of fame, touring, and managing her public image started to take a toll. Alcohol became a way to relax and escape the constant pressure. The real problem came when her drinking turned into a habit she couldn't control. Reports from people close to her said she would sometimes drink before shows or interviews, which could make her seem distant or distracted. The media caught on when she had public incidents that couldn't be hidden. One of the biggest moments that showed her struggle was in 2002 when she was arrested for DUI in Arizona. The arrest made huge headlines because she wasn't just a regular person. She was a music legend. That night, her blood alcohol level was over the legal limit, and it showed that her drinking wasn't just private anymore. It was becoming a public problem. After the arrest, she went to rehab, but staying sober wasn't easy. Alcohol had become something she leaned on, especially during personal challenges like career setbacks or relationship issues. For many people, rehab is a wake-up call, but for Diana, it was part of a long process of dealing with her dependency. Friends have said that Diana's drinking sometimes made her mood unpredictable. Alcohol can bring out emotions, sadness, anger, or overconfidence, and for someone constantly in the public eye, those moments could quickly turn into headlines. Over the years, she has worked on her sobriety, and there have been periods when she seemed to be doing well. But her history with alcohol shows how even the most glamorous stars can face serious struggles behind the scenes. 7. Tracy Morgan.
What was the wake-up call?
Losing my family. My wife wanted a divorce. I put the alcohol down and I just walked away from all of it.
Tracy Morgan, the comedian and actor best known for Saturday Night Live and 30 Rock, has always been full of energy and laughter on screen. But behind that funny personality, he had a long fight with alcohol that almost cost him everything: his career, his health, and even his life. Tracy's drinking problem grew slowly. In the early days of his career, he was known for partying hard after shows. Alcohol became a normal part of his life, especially in the entertainment world, where late nights and celebrations are common. At first, he probably thought it was just part of the fun. But over time, it turned into something more dangerous, something he couldn't easily control. His alcohol use started showing in public ways. He was arrested more than once for driving under the influence, and these incidents made headlines. Fans who loved his comedy were shocked, but for Tracy, it was another sign that alcohol was taking over his life. Each time he got in trouble, he would promise to do better, but breaking free from alcohol isn't that simple. One of the lowest points came when the legal trouble piled up and his health began to suffer. Alcohol not only affected his work, making him unreliable at times, but also damaged his relationships. Friends, co-stars, and family members noticed that when he drank, he could be unpredictable, sometimes funny, sometimes angry, and sometimes completely out of control. Eventually, Tracy realized he couldn't keep living like that. After multiple alcohol-related incidents, he checked himself into rehab. In rehab, he had to face the truth. Alcohol wasn't just something he liked to drink. It was an addiction that was controlling him. He learned about triggers like stress and depression that made him want to drink more. Getting sober gave him a chance to rebuild his career and personal life. But even after rehab, staying away from alcohol was a daily choice. Tracy has spoken in interviews about how important it is to recognize that recovery never truly ends. It's something you work on every day. 8. Billy Dee Williams.
Let me tell you something, and don't you ever forget it. Success is nothing.
Billy Dee Williams, the smooth and charming actor best known as Lando Calrissian in Star Wars, had a career that made him a Hollywood icon. But even someone as cool and confident as Billy Dee wasn't immune to the dangers of alcohol addiction. He has openly admitted that his drinking cost him opportunities in Hollywood and slowed down his career at one point. In the height of his fame during the 1970s and 1980s, Billy Dee had everything: fame, money, and the kind of roles most actors dream about. But the constant social events, Hollywood parties, and late nights on set made alcohol a regular part of his lifestyle. At first, it was just casual drinking, but over time, he started relying on it more. Alcohol gave him a boost of confidence, but it also caused problems he couldn't ignore. Some days, he would show up on set, not feeling his best because of drinking the night before. In Hollywood, where timing and reliability are everything, this didn't go unnoticed. He's admitted that alcohol led to some unprofessional moments, and as a result, he lost out on work. Billy Dee has talked about how drinking also affected his personal life. Alcohol can change your mood and make small problems seem bigger, leading to arguments and misunderstandings with friends and loved ones. His smooth, charming public image didn't always match what was going on in his private life. Eventually, he recognized that his drinking was holding him back. He made the decision to slow down and take control before it destroyed everything he had worked for. It wasn't easy. Like many people struggling with addiction, he had to face the reality that alcohol had been part of his identity for years. By admitting the problem and working to overcome it, Billy D was able to recover his health and focus on the things that mattered to him, like acting, art, and spending time with his family. He shared his story not to hurt his image, but to show that even people who seem to have it all can face real struggles and can overcome them. 9. Florence Ballard. Florence Ballard was one of the founding members of the Supremes, one of the most successful girl groups in history. She had a powerful voice and a bright future, but her life took a tragic turn, and alcohol became one of the biggest reasons for her downfall. In the early days of the Supremes, Florence was full of energy and ambition, but as the group got bigger, her role started to shrink. Diana Ross became the lead singer, and Florence felt pushed aside. Losing the spotlight was painful for her, and she started drinking to cope with the feelings of rejection and frustration. At first, it was just a drink here and there, but it slowly turned into a serious habit. Alcohol became her way of escaping reality. Whenever she felt hurt, lonely, or left out, she would drink. The music industry at the time was also full of parties and late-night events, making it easy for her to keep drinking without anyone stopping her. Her alcoholism began to affect her career. She missed rehearsals, showed up late, or wasn't in the best shape to perform. The group's managers and members started losing patience. Eventually, in 1967, Florence was removed from the Supremes completely. This only made her drinking worse. Without the group, Florence struggled to start a solo career. The lack of success, financial problems, and her growing depression pushed her deeper into alcoholism. Friends and family tried to help, but the addiction had already taken a strong hold on her. Her health started to decline. Alcohol can damage almost every organ in the body, and for Florence, years of heavy drinking left her weak. She gained weight, suffered from mood swings, and often looked much older than she was. By the mid-1970s, Florence was living in poverty. She had gone from performing on the world's biggest stages to struggling just to pay rent. Alcohol was still a constant in her life, and without proper medical care or rehab, her condition only got worse. In 1976, at just 32 years old, Florence Ballard died of cardiac arrest. While the official cause wasn't listed as alcoholism, years of drinking had destroyed her health and made her vulnerable to illness. 10. Marvin Gaye.
I write my music according to my lifestyle. If I'm sad, I write sad music. If I'm being divorced, I write divorce albums. If I'm
Marvin Gaye was called the Prince of Motown and gave the world classics like Let's Get It On and What's Going On. But even someone with his talent and charm wasn't safe from the grip of addiction. In the later years of his life, alcohol became a serious problem that added to the chaos around him. Marvin's relationship with alcohol grew stronger as his life became more stressful. Fame brought money, but it also brought pressure, expectations, and personal problems. He began drinking more to deal with his anxiety, relationship troubles, and the demands of constant touring. By the late 1970s, his alcohol use had become more noticeable. Friends said he could drink heavily for hours, sometimes starting in the morning. Alcohol often went hand in hand with his other struggles, like drug use, making it even more dangerous. The more Marvin drank, the more it affected his work. There were times he would cancel shows or arrive late to the studio. While he could still produce incredible music, the behind-the-scenes reality was different. Alcohol was wearing him down physically and emotionally. Marvin's drinking also worsened his mental health. Alcohol can make depression and anger stronger, and for Marvin, it often led to heated arguments, especially with his father. Their relationship had always been tense, but alcohol made it more explosive. During his time living in Europe in the early 1980s, Marvin tried to cut back, but he couldn't stay away from alcohol for long. It was a cycle. He'd slow down for a while, then fall right back into heavy drinking. In his final year, Marvin's alcohol use was at its worst. Friends and family noticed that he was drinking more often and seemed emotionally unstable. His career was still alive, but his personal life was falling apart. Tragically, in April 1984, after a heated argument with his father, Marvin was shot and killed in their home. While the shooting wasn't directly caused by alcohol, his drinking had contributed to the tensions and instability in his life. 11. Eddie Griffin.
Why you drinking? It's Saturday. Why you drinking? It's Sunday. Jesus had wine at the Last Supper.
Eddie Griffin is a stand-up comedian and actor known for his wild energy and sharp humor. But away from the stage, he's been very open about something not so funny, his long struggle with alcohol abuse. For years, drinking was part of Eddie's life, and it took a toll on him in ways that most fans didn't see. Eddie started drinking when he was young, and it quickly became something he used to celebrate, relax, or just pass the time. In the entertainment world, especially in comedy, late nights are normal, and alcohol is almost always around. For Eddie, this made it easy to drink regularly without anyone questioning it at first. The problem was, his drinking didn't stay casual. Over the years, it became heavier, and he started depending on it to deal with stress, especially from the pressures of fame, touring, and personal problems. Alcohol became his way of escaping when things got overwhelming. Friends and co-workers noticed that when Eddie drank, he could become unpredictable. Sometimes he'd be the life of the party, making everyone laugh, and other times he'd get moody or even argumentative. Alcohol can do that. It changes your mood and behavior depending on how much you've had and what you're going through emotionally. Eddie has admitted that drinking affected his career. There were times when he showed up to shows or film sets not feeling his best because of the night before. In comedy, timing and focus are everything, and alcohol can easily mess with that. 12. Paul Mooney.
But he's always been very funny. He was born in Peoria, where half the kids in town call him a superstar these days. The other half call him Daddy.
Paul Mooney was a legendary comedian, writer, and actor who worked with some of the biggest names in comedy. But before he became the confident, outspoken figure fans knew, he had a personal battle with alcohol dependency early in his career. Paul's introduction to alcohol was similar to many young performers. It was just part of the scene. When you're starting out in entertainment, especially in clubs, alcohol is everywhere. At first, it might seem harmless to have a drink or two before going on stage. For Paul, it started that way, but grew into a habit. In the early years, Paul drank to deal with stage nerves and to loosen up before performing. Alcohol can make people feel more confident, but it also makes it harder to stay sharp. Paul realized that after a few drinks, his timing and delivery sometimes suffered, but the short-term comfort alcohol gave him kept him coming back to it. As his career developed, his drinking became more frequent. It wasn't always about having fun. Sometimes it was about dealing with stress, rejection, or the grind of trying to make it in show business. Alcohol became a coping mechanism, something to fall back on when things got hard. But dependency on alcohol doesn't stay hidden forever. Paul noticed it was starting to affect his health and his work. He was tired more often, less focused, and sometimes unreliable. Friends and colleagues in the comedy world saw the change too. Paul eventually realized that if he wanted to have a long and successful career, he had to get control over his drinking. He decided to address it before it completely destroyed his opportunities. Admitting there was a problem wasn't easy, but it was necessary. 13. Nina Simone.
All I'm trying to do all the time is just to open people up so they can feel themselves and let themselves be open to somebody else.
Nina Simone, known as the High Priestess of Soul, had one of the most powerful voices in music history. But behind her talent, she carried a lot of emotional pain and mental health struggles, and alcohol became one of the ways she tried to cope. Nina's life was full of pressure from a young age. She trained as a classical pianist and then became famous for her unique singing style. But fame brought its own problems: constant touring, racism, relationship troubles, and the pressure to always perform perfectly. Over time, she turned to alcohol as a way to numb her stress and sadness. Her drinking wasn't just for social situations, it became a regular part of her life. Friends and colleagues noticed that she would often have alcohol before going on stage, saying it helped her relax. But alcohol also started to affect her performances. Sometimes she would be late to shows, forget lyrics, or have mood swings on stage. Nina also suffered from mental health issues, including depression and what many believe was bipolar disorder. Alcohol and mental illness are a dangerous mix because drinking can make mood swings worse and make it harder to manage emotions. In her case, it often fueled anger and frustration. There were times when her drinking got so bad that it hurt her career. Club owners and promoters didn't want to deal with unpredictable behavior, and she lost opportunities. But alcohol had become part of her way of dealing with life. It was something she reached for when she felt overwhelmed. Later in life, Nina's drinking continued, even when her health started failing. She moved to different countries, hoping for a fresh start, but alcohol always followed her. It wasn't just about addiction, it was about trying to quiet the pain inside her. 14. Don Cornelius.
Today we learned the show's creator Don Cornelius, who was plagued by health problems, died by his own hand at the age of 75.
Don Cornelius, the creator and host of Soul Train, was a major figure in American music television. He brought black music and culture to millions of homes, but in his personal life, alcohol became a problem that grew worse over time. Don's career was glamorous on the outside, but it was stressful behind the scenes. Producing a hit show every week and managing artists, advertisers, and networks took a toll on him. To unwind, he often turned to alcohol. At first, it was just to relax after long days, but over the years, it became a habit he depended on. His alcohol use started to affect his relationships. Friends and family said that he could be moody and withdrawn when drinking. Alcohol often made his temper worse, leading to arguments. As Soul Train went on, Don began dealing with more personal problems. He had health issues, including brain surgery in the late 1980s, and he never fully recovered from them. Alcohol became a way to deal with pain and frustration, but it only made things worse mentally and physically. In his later years, Don faced legal troubles related to alcohol misuse. These incidents hurt his public image and made it clear that his drinking was no longer just a private issue. Sadly, Don's life ended tragically in 2012 when he took his own life. While alcohol wasn't the only factor, it was part of the long decline in his personal and emotional well-being. 15. Robin Harris.
I know why. Because I'm a poor black man in a black neighborhood on a black block, and y'all just want to bust my black ass. No.
Robin Harris was a stand-up comedian and actor best known for House Party and his hilarious Bebe's Kids routine. He was loved for his quick wit and natural stage presence, but alcohol played a big role in his short life. Robin's comedy career was built on late-night shows and constant touring, an environment where alcohol is everywhere. Like many comedians, he started drinking socially after shows. But over time, it turned into heavier drinking that began to affect his health. Alcohol became a regular part of his routine. He would drink before or after performances, sometimes both. While he could still deliver a great set, friends noticed he was pushing himself too hard, performing night after night without taking care of himself. His drinking wasn't about partying alone, it was also about dealing with the pressures of success. Fame came fast for Robin, and with it came the stress of staying relevant in Hollywood. Alcohol gave him a way to relax, but it was also damaging his body. By his early 30s, Robin was already dealing with health problems linked to high blood pressure and lifestyle choices, including heavy drinking. Alcohol can weaken the heart over time, and combined with his exhausting work schedule, it put him at serious risk. In 1990, Robin Harris died suddenly in his sleep at just 36 years old from heart failure. While his official cause of death wasn't listed as alcoholism, years of drinking had likely contributed to his poor health. If you thought this was crazy, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready, because the next video will be even more shocking.